Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The neighborhood streets glowed under the amber hues of the autumn sunset, the elongated shadows painting a serene golden scene as Elena guided her car toward home. The warmth of the moment clashed with the undercurrent of tension within her, but a glance at Owen, seated relaxed and confident in the passenger seat, was enough to steady her nerves. His reassuring smile felt like a silent promise. Tonight was their moment of escape. As Elena eased the car into the driveway, she turned toward him, her eyes gleaming with a mischievous energy. "Samuel took the kids to his parents earlier," she said, her voice alight with anticipation. "We've got the whole place to ourselves for 2 days." Owen leaned closer, his grin widening. "Finally," he replied, a chuckle threading through his words. "Feels like we've been waiting forever for this." They stepped into the quiet house together, the door clicking softly shut behind them. Elena's hand lingered on the knob as she called out experimentally, "Kids? Samuel?" The emptiness of the response drew a smile to her lips, and she turned to Owen with a knowing nod. "Just the way I planned it," she said. Owen's eyes roamed over the cozy interior, the soft aroma of lavender greeting them like an unspoken welcome. Dropping his bag near the door, he approached Elena with a warm expression. "This is going to be the night we've needed for so long," he said, slipping an arm around her waist. "Not a single interruption," Elena agreed, her voice carrying a playful note. Then, with a sudden flicker of caution, she added, "But let me just check one more time. Samuel forgets things now and then." She grabbed her phone, strolling through the house as she dialed her husband's number. The faint sound of ringing gave way to his voicemail, and Elena set the phone down on the counter with a shrug. "No answer," she said with a casual air. "He's probably busy chasing after the kids." Turning back to Owen, her smile widened. "We're all set. Let's make the most of it." Owen wandered into the kitchen, settling into a chair with an appreciative glance around. "You've outdone yourself, Elena," he said, leaning back. "This morning I was bracing myself for another rushed coffee meetup." Elena opened her mouth to respond, but her gaze snagged on something unusual. A blanket, rumpled and draped over the sofa, stood out in sharp contrast to the otherwise pristine room. Her brow furrowed as she moved toward it. "That's strange," she murmured, her fingers brushing the fabric. "What is it?" Owen asked, sitting up straighter. Elena hesitated, her voice laced with unease. "Samuel always tidies everything up before he leaves. This shouldn't—" Her words froze mid-sentence as the blanket shifted, revealing Samuel beneath it. He rose slowly, his gaze icy and unrelenting as it swept over Elena and Owen. "Surprise," he said, his tone cutting through the air like a blade. Elena staggered back, her hand flying to her mouth. "Samuel, what are you doing here? I thought you were at your parents' house." Samuel's presence loomed larger as he stepped forward, his expression hardened with quiet fury. "Clearly I had other plans," he said, his voice like steel. "Now, would you care to explain what this is all about?" Elena's pulse thundered in her ears as she tried to find her footing. Straightening her posture, she smoothed her dress with trembling hands, attempting to mask the storm of panic within. "Samuel," she began, her voice faltering but striving for calm. "This isn't what it looks like. Owen and we're just friends." Samuel's eyebrows arched skeptically, his arms crossing tightly over his chest. "Friends?" he repeated, each syllable dripping with disbelief. "Yes," Elena blurted out, her gaze darting to Owen, silently pleading for him to corroborate. "He's just here for coffee or tea, to catch up, nothing else." Owen perched awkwardly on the kitchen chair, nodded in stiff agreement. His hands twisted together as he added in a shaky voice, "That's right, just stopping by for a little while. Nothing more." Samuel stood immobile, his piercing gaze flicking between Elena and Owen. His face was a storm of restrained fury and cold calculation. "Coffee and conversation?" he said, his tone dripping with derision. "Funny, because when you came in, Elena, I distinctly heard you telling your friend here that it was just the two of you tonight. No disturbances, that you'd been waiting ages for this. Elena froze, her cheeks flushing as she struggled to respond. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Finally, she managed a shaky laugh, her voice uneven. Oh, that? Just a joke, of course. Right, Owen? A silly little joke. Owen nodded hastily, though his effort to appear composed fell flat. Yes, exactly. Office humor. We've known each other forever. Totally harmless. Samuel's eyes narrowed, his expression darkening further, as though a shadow had fallen over him. His voice, quiet but razor-sharp, sliced through the room. Harmless? That's your excuse? You're both pathetic liars! The weight of his fury hit Elena like a blow, her legs trembling as she reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. Samuel, listen, she began, her voice quivering. Shut up, he snapped, his words seething with anger. He moved across the room in measured, deliberate strides, each step intensifying the tension. Opening a cabinet by the mantel, he pulled out a small, polished wooden box that gleamed ominously in the dim light. Elena's stomach twisted in dread. What are you doing? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Samuel said nothing. He opened the box, revealing their wedding rings nestled inside. Placing it on the table, he reached into his back pocket and produced a pair of pliers. The cold, metallic glint of the tool reflected the light as he turned it in his hand. Stop this, Samuel! Elena cried, stepping toward him, her voice shaking. His glare froze her mid-step. I told you to shut up, he growled, his tone cutting like a blade. Owen sat stiffly in his chair, his face ashen, his knuckles white as he gripped his knees. Let's take a breath, Samuel. Calm down, he urged, his tone measured but strained. Samuel shot him a glare that could have frozen fire. Without another word, he grabbed Elena's ring, wedging it between the jaws of the pliers. With a sharp squeeze, the metal twisted and snapped. The sound echoed through the room, cold and final. Elena gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as she watched him drop the mangled ring into the trash. Samuel, no, she sobbed, tears streaming down her cheeks. That ring, it's what? Samuel cut her off, his voice like ice. A symbol of love? A promise? Don't insult me, Elena, you already broke those. He picked up his own ring and repeated the action, the gold groaning under the pressure until it, too, lay ruined. He tossed it into the trash alongside hers, the two twisted bands now symbols of a shattered bond. Elena collapsed into a chair, her sobs uncontrollable. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice a broken whisper. Samuel leaned down, his eyes hard with betrayal and scorn. Why? Because you destroyed everything we built, he said, each word hitting like a hammer. I'm just making it official. Straightening, he glared at both Elena and Owen, his face a mask of contempt. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but the raw anger beneath was unmistakable. Get out, both of you, now. Elena sat frozen, her expression caught between disbelief and fury. Then, like a dam breaking, her anger erupted. You can't kick me out of my own house, she screamed, her voice shrill and defiant. I have just as much right to be here as you do. Owen raised his hands in a placating gesture, palms out. Samuel, let's not make this worse, he said, his voice careful. We're all upset. We can talk this through. But Samuel's gaze silenced him instantly, leaving no doubt that there would be no discussion, no compromise. His jaw tightened, and his eyes blazed as they locked onto the pair before him. Talk? He repeated, his voice rising sharply. Elena, you brought another man into my house, into our bedroom, and now you think we can just sit down and have a civil discussion? Are you out of your mind? Elena stepped closer to Samuel, fists clenched at her sides, her voice cutting through the tension. We're not lovers, she retorted, the words sharp as a blade. But if you're so desperate to believe your warped fantasy, fine, let's make it a reality for you right here and now. Her voice escalated, the air between them charged with electricity. Owen and I will give you the show of a lifetime, she snarled. Across the room, Owen paled, clutching his head as his voice trembled. Elena, stop! You're taking this too far. She whipped around to him, her fury momentarily redirected. Don't you dare try to silence me, Owen! Her glare snapped back to Samuel, who stood unmoving, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. Look at this man! My husband standing there like a brute, puffing himself up as if he's some kind of warlord. What are you, Samuel? A feudal king? A caveman? Well, newsflash. I live here too. Her voice cracked with defiant intensity as she moved even closer. You don't own me. You don't control my life. Who I talk to, what I do, or where I go. Samuel's eyes narrowed, his expression dark and unreadable. His voice, cold and measured, cut through her tirade. Elena, you've lost touch with reality. This is your last chance. Leave my house. Now. With deliberate precision, he strode to the closet and retrieved a baseball bat. The faint scrape of wood against the frame echoed ominously. Turning back, he gripped the bat firmly, his voice deadly calm. Get out, while you still have the chance. Tomorrow you'll get the divorce papers. Pray that's the only thing you'll get. Owen's resolve crumbled at the sight of the bat. Elena, let's go, he urged in a hushed voice, tugging at her arm. This isn't worth it. The mention of divorce drained the fire from Elena's rage, leaving an icy calm in its wake. Her voice turned quiet but venomous. You'll regret this, Samuel, she hissed, her words dripping with malice. You'll pay for every threat, every power play, every humiliation. I'll make sure of it. Samuel's face remained stoic as he pointed toward the door with the bat. Out! Now! Owen tugged harder on Elena's arm, his voice pleading. Come on, Elena, let's just leave, please. At last, she relented, allowing herself to be led out, though she shot one final, searing glare over her shoulder. You'll regret this, she growled before the door slammed shut, the sound echoing like a final blow to their marriage. The car ride away from the house was suffocating, silence filling the space like a heavy fog. When they arrived outside a dimly lit bar, the neon lights reflected off the windshield, casting distorted colors over their strained faces. Inside, they sat at the bar, each nursing a drink, the weight of the evening pressing down on them. I can't believe him, Elena fumed, her grip tightening on her glass as though she wished it were Samuel's neck. Threatening me in my home. Who does he think he is? Owen sat quietly, running a hand through his hair. His drink remained untouched as he finally spoke, his tone weary. Elena, maybe we need to take a step back, he murmured. Tonight spiraled way out of control. Her glass hit the bar with a sharp clink as she turned on him, her eyes flashing. You're taking his side now? After everything he's done? I'm not taking anyone's side, Owen replied firmly, though fatigue crept into his voice. I'm saying we need to be smart. Samuel's not bluffing. If he files for divorce, it's going to be ugly. You need to be prepared for that. For the first time, Elena's anger gave way to hesitation, her voice quiet and uncertain. You think he'll really go through with it? Owen's expression was grim as he nodded. Yeah, and if he does, we're going to need a plan. Elena sank into her chair, her mind churning with turbulent thoughts. Divorce had never been on her horizon, yet here she was, bracing for a bitter battle that seemed all but inevitable. The weight of the moment pressed down on her as she absently swirled the whiskey in her glass, attempting to piece together the chaos that had erupted. Across from her, Owen leaned forward, his expression shifting from empathetic concern to a sharper, more deliberate resolve. After a heavy pause, he spoke with measured determination. Elena, you deserve better than this, he began, his gaze locking onto hers. Samuel didn't just disrespect you tonight. He undermined everything you've built together, all the sacrifices you've made for him. Elena placed her glass on the table with a sharp clink, her jaw tightening in defiance. You're right, she said, her voice hardening. I'm not letting him get away with this. Owen nodded, his demeanor calm but assertive as he laid out his thoughts. If he's serious about pushing for a divorce, you need to be ready. His anger will make him reckless. He'll try to take the house, the money, and maybe even custody of the kids. But you don't have to let that happen. The courts will see the truth. You've been the foundation of this family. Elena's eyes narrowed as skepticism mingled with intrigue. What are you suggesting exactly? Owen leaned closer, his voice lowering as though unveiling a critical strategy. You need to fight back, hard. Get the best lawyer you can. Present the full picture of what you've contributed to this marriage. Samuel's success? That didn't happen without you. If you play your cards right, you can protect the house, the assets, and even custody. Elena's brow furrowed as she processed his words. Custody? You think I can actually win that? Owen's lips curled into a faint, confident smile. Absolutely. You've always been the steady, nurturing parent. Samuel's temper will work against him in court. What he did tonight is just more proof of that. A judge will see it too. A flicker of determination sparked in Elena's eyes. So you're saying I should go after everything? The house? The money? Owen's voice softened, turning almost persuasive. Why not? You've earned it. More than that, you deserve a chance to rebuild your life on your terms, secure, independent, and free of him. His unspoken meaning lingered in the space between them. Elena tilted her head, a faintly sardonic smile curling her lips. Free of Samuel, you mean? She said pointedly. Owen hesitated for a moment before nodding. Exactly. A bitter laugh escaped Elena as she leaned back in her chair. You've really thought this through, she said, her tone dry. Owen spread his hands, his expression sincere. I just want you to be happy, Elena. You've spent so long giving to someone who doesn't appreciate it. Now it's time to focus on what's best for you. Elena studied him carefully, then drained the rest of her drink in one decisive gulp. All right, she said firmly. I'll do it. He'll regret ever starting this. The next morning her phone buzzed, interrupting the silence. She answered briskly, her heart tightening at the sound of the measured, professional voice on the other end. This is Jack Forrester, Samuel's attorney. He's instructed me to deliver the divorce papers. When and where would you like to meet? Though her chest clenched, Elena forced her voice to remain steady. Let's meet at the cafe on Main Street, she replied. At exactly 1 p.m., Elena walked into the cafe, her eyes immediately finding Forrester seated at a table, a thick envelope in front of him. His demeanor was as cold and formal as his tone had been. Without preamble, he slid the documents across the table. These are my client's terms, he said curtly. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope, scanning the pages. With each word, her anger burned hotter, her resolve solidifying into something unyielding. Samuel demanded ownership of the house, control of nearly all their shared assets, and sole custody of the children. Elena snapped the envelope shut, her icy glare locking onto the lawyer. Tell him he's delusional if he thinks he'll get away with this, she said curtly, before storming out of the office. Back in Owen's cramped apartment, she flung the papers onto the table, pacing furiously as her frustration boiled over. He's trying to take everything, she fumed, her voice quaking with anger. Owen, leaning calmly against the counter, watched her intently. Then don't back down, he said evenly. Show the court everything you've endured, what you gave to that marriage and to him. His tone hardened. If he's picking a fight, give him one. In the days that followed, Elena poured her energy into building her case. With Owen's quiet encouragement, the two scoured the city, searching for a top-tier divorce attorney. Their persistence led them to Rachel Carter, a formidable lawyer with a reputation for tenacity and sharp legal instincts. During their first meeting, Elena laid everything bare, her words tinged with both pain and resolve. She described Samuel as a domineering and volatile husband. He's unstable, she said flatly, her anger simmering beneath her calm. He once threatened me with a baseball bat. Rachel listened carefully, jotting down notes with precision. Our focus will be on his behavior, Rachel explained. We'll demonstrate that you're the stable, responsible parent. Custody will be the cornerstone of our argument. In the background, Owen maintained his supportive demeanor while privately entertaining dreams of the future. With Elena's potential victory, he envisioned a life of wealth and leisure, exotic vacations, financial freedom, all funded by Samuel's assets. Though his motivations remained hidden, he continued urging Elena to stay focused on her fight. The courtroom was charged with tension the day Elena and Samuel met face to face. Seated beside Rachel, Elena appeared outwardly composed, though nerves coursed through her. Across the room, Samuel sat confidently, his lawyer, Jack Forrester, exuding calm authority. Elena's testimony painted a vivid picture of Samuel's controlling and unpredictable nature. She recounted the night he confronted her and Owen, emphasizing his violent threat with the baseball bat. "I gave everything to our marriage," Elena said, her voice heavy with emotion. But his aggression and need for control made it unbearable. Rachel reinforced Elena's claims, portraying her as a devoted wife and nurturing mother. "My client sacrificed for this family," Rachel argued. "Now her husband seeks to leave her with nothing. We will not allow that." When Forrester began his defense, his approach was calculated and precise. Piece by piece, he dismantled Elena's narrative. Producing photos, text messages, and witness statements, he exposed her affair with Owen. The image of Mr. Lee as a violent and domineering husband falls apart when faced with the truth, Forrester declared. Mrs. Lee violated her vows, inviting her lover into their home. Forrester further challenged Elena's claims of financial support, presenting records that revealed extravagant spending on Owen, including lavish gifts, expensive meals, and even payments for his apartment. "She portrays herself as the financial backbone of their marriage," Forrester said. Yet these records tell a different story. To counter Elena's accusations, Forrester introduced testimonials from Samuel's friends, neighbors, and colleagues, describing him as a reliable and loving father and husband. "Samuel Lee has shown grace and restraint," Forrester said. "Even after being betrayed, he left joint accounts open, ensuring Elena had access to legal resources. This is not the behavior of a controlling or vindictive man. This is a father fighting for his children and his integrity." The courtroom grew quiet as Forrester concluded his case. "Mr. Lee is not the aggressor here. He is a man wronged, seeking justice and protection for his family." As the trial unfolded, Forrester's methodical strategy began to sway the proceedings. Each piece of evidence chipped away at Elena's case. Her composure started to crack, her confidence eroding with every new revelation. From the back of the courtroom, Owen watched in silence. The vision of a lavish, carefree life he had imagined with Elena began to dissolve, the dream slipping further from reach with every passing day. Samuel's case gained traction, unraveling Elena's hopes of building a shared future with him. As the trial unfolded, the courtroom buzzed with tension, growing heavier with each passing day. Elena's composed demeanor began to crack under the relentless pressure. During a brief recess, her attorney, Rachel Carter, confronted her, voice low but laced with frustration. "Why didn't you tell me your husband had this kind of leverage over you?" Rachel demanded, her eyes sharp. "You claimed he only caught you at the house once. I could have handled this differently if I'd known." "I didn't think he was aware," Elena replied faintly, her complexion pale. "I didn't think it would come up." "Well, it has," Rachel retorted, flipping through her papers in agitation. "And now it's undermining everything." Across the courtroom, Samuel's lawyer, Jack Forrester, seized the opportunity to intensify the assault on Elena's credibility. Addressing the judge, his tone was deliberate and incisive. "Your Honor, we must consider the financial relationship between Miss Elena and Mr. Owen," he stated. "Mr. Owen has no stable income and relies entirely on Miss Elena's financial support. Could their relationship be motivated by economic necessity rather than genuine affection? And might their intentions involve securing the family's wealth for personal gain, rather than prioritizing the children's welfare?" Though the judge's face remained impassive, Elena could feel her grip on the case slipping further. Weeks of exhaustive testimonies and cross-examinations culminated in a ruling that shattered her last vestiges of hope. "After a thorough review of the evidence," the judge declared, "the court finds that Mr. Samuel has consistently demonstrated his ability to provide a stable environment for the children and maintain the family home. Consequently, primary custody of the children and the family residence is awarded to Mr. Samuel." Elena's world crumbled. The judge's words blurred as the weight of the verdict bore down on her, though she vaguely registered the details of the remaining arrangements. "Miss Elena will retain her personal vehicle, a portion of the shared financial assets, and selected items from the marital home. While this allocation is modest, it reflects the circumstances of the case." Despite Rachel's best efforts, the outcome was devastating. Elena had lost far more than she could bear. Samuel exited the courtroom with an air of measured calm, his satisfaction carefully concealed. The verdict had secured everything he sought: stability for his children and the preservation of his role as their primary caregiver. In stark contrast, Elena and Owen left in oppressive silence, the weight of defeat pressing heavily on them. Back at Owen's small apartment, the full force of her loss hit Elena. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she murmured, staring vacantly at the worn floorboards. Owen paced the room, offering hollow reassurances. "We'll find a way," he said, though his words lacked conviction. Elena's expression hardened as she confronted the undeniable truth. Samuel had won, and with that victory, she had lost control of her life. In the weeks that followed, Elena's reality grew bleaker. She moved permanently into Owen's cramped apartment, a far cry from the comfort and security she once envisioned. Weekend visitation allowed her brief moments with her children, but the arrangement only deepened her isolation. Samuel, true to his character, facilitated her visits without hostility, but maintained a distant and formal demeanor. Though she cherished her time with the children, she couldn't ignore how Samuel's steady presence had become their foundation, while she remained on the outskirts of their lives. Owen, meanwhile, began to unravel. His absences became more frequent, and unpaid bills accumulated, a silent testament to their mounting struggles. One day, as Elena checked her dwindling bank account, she discovered that her remaining savings had vanished entirely. That evening, her fury erupted. "Where's my money?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger. Owen avoided her gaze, fumbling through weak excuses before finally admitting the truth. He had gambled it all away. "I thought I could win it back," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I just got unlucky." For Elena, it was the final betrayal. The man she had counted on to rebuild her life had instead dragged her further into despair. Overwhelmed by regret and the stark realization that she had staked her future on someone incapable of stability, she was left reeling. When Owen recognized that forgiveness was beyond reach, he left without a word, abandoning her with nothing but a hastily written note of apology. Alone in the quiet of the apartment, Elena faced the grim reality of her choices and the life she now had to rebuild from the ground up. Elena found herself utterly isolated, her finances drained and her trust in others shattered. The weight of her past decisions pressed down on her, leaving her feeling suffocated. She spent days lost in sorrow, drowning in the enormity of her despair. With no one to rely on, Elena threw herself into her job, pouring every ounce of energy into meeting her financial obligations. Weekends became her sole respite, a fleeting and bittersweet solace spent with her children, the final fragile tie to the life she had irrevocably fractured. One quiet Sunday afternoon, as Elena dropped the children off at Samuel's house, she hesitated at the threshold. Samuel appeared in the doorway, his expression calm but distant. Elena's voice trembled with unsteady emotion as she finally spoke. "Samuel," she began, her words soft and laden with guilt. "I need to tell you I'm sorry for everything. I know the damage I've caused, and it haunts me every day." For a long, excruciating moment, Samuel said nothing, his gaze unreadable. Though his face was composed, a flicker of pity crossed his eyes, tempered by an unwavering determination. At last, he broke the silence, his tone measured but resolute. "Elena," he said, "I forgave you a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't erase what's happened. Too much has changed, and we can't go back. This is how things need to be, for me and for the kids." Elena nodded slowly, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. She had clung to a fragile hope that a second chance might still be possible, but deep within, she knew it was one she had not earned. Resigned, Elena came to terms with the reality of her situation. Her path forward would not be about reclaiming the past, but enduring the consequences of her choices, facing each day as it came, one step at a time. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.